What's up, beautiful people? I'm Nathaniel Pearl,
And I'm Sammy Sheva.
and welcome to Curious Chimps Podcast, a show where we explore the infinite complexities of the human experience.
We do not endorse anything illegal, so please consult doctors, do your research, and for the love of all that is holy, be safe. All right, let's talk about drugs.
Curious Chimps.
I think he got it in,
I got it in Mexico.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's a bit. I thought you were just messing around, and then it became a really like comprehensive music. You're really good at that.
It's called the Wren hornpipe, or the Belfast hornpipe. That's the first part of it. I could play all three parts if you like, but
It sounded nice.
I'm tempted, honestly. I just love music, so I don't want to keep. I guess we're a little tight on time already, but that's that. You know what that reminds me of? I don't know if you're a fan of Star Trek, but in the Next Generation.
I haven't watched it since the 70s. I'm sorry.
Oh, the original one. Yeah, the show after that with Picard there with I think it was Sir Patrick Stewart, and I think he's knighted. I feel like just calling him Sir.
Yeah.
He is? He is?
He is. Yeah.
There's an episode where he lives an entirely different life. Like it's this kind of way of it's like a technology of archaeology and like anthropology. Like they kind of beam this life of this person in another planet into his brain. So in a couple of hours he lives like 50 years. It's a very interesting episode. And when he wakes up he can play the flute because the person he lived played the flute. And it's exactly the same, like this kind of small metal tube style. And it's I want one. We'll trade.
So,
There's in one of the Puranas, I can't remember which one, the Hindu myths, Vishnu gives somebody someone else's life, just like puts them into this other life, and he lives the whole life believing it's real, and falls in love, gets married, has children, grows old, dies, and he's back with Vishnu again. And it's like only a second or two has passed. But I've often thought that might be inspired by psychedelics.
that sounds like it.
That is what that sounds like, right? You feel like time is diluted or extended in some way. There's kind of like an infinity, and then a kind of it sounds very dreamlike as well, because it seems like so much information, and then when you wake up, it feels like years.
Absolutely. I've studied the yoga of the dream path, which is one of the 6 yogas of Narapa. Actually done Buddhist retreats on this. And one of the things that happened to me is that I was in a dream that I fully thought was real. And I was a middle-aged woman.
Wow.
Having a mid-morning break, having a cup of tea and a cookie, and thinking about how she had to look after her elderly mother who was bedridden upstairs. There was a whole context to this, which I was fully immersed in. And I was surprised when I woke up to find that I wasn't her. I was the mother, bedridden upstairs.
Whoa.
This was the weirdest dream I've ever had.
You had like a false awakening, and you became the mother as well?
Yes.
Whoa.
Exactly.
I thought I had you beat. I had a story waiting. I was like, you know what? I got like a.
Tell me.
No, I can't. Well, I mean, that yours is better for sure. But I had a false awakening once, because I've dabbled with lucid dreaming a little bit, and your brain starts getting like savvy almost, and tries to trick you to be in a dream again. And I woke up, and I don't use this term often, but I shit you not. Like I can't. There's no other way for me to explain this. I woke up and I was like a robot. I was some kind of like automaton, but I was also like I was like at a press conference, and it was my job to like I was like a journalist. I was there to like record what a politician was saying, and I had fallen asleep or some, I don't know, but I woke up and I was some kind of like android, and I just realized what I needed to do, like in that kind of panic moment when you wake up and you're like, oh, was I asleep? Oh no, I need to do what I needed to do. And it was, I mean, I can't, the details are obviously all shattered now, but I was like, I worked for a certain firm. I had friends, like I had a life. The guy next to me, I knew him, I knew his wife. Like it was very strange, but for some reason in this detailed, strange life, I was also some kind of half robot person. It makes no sense. But yours wins because you got a double. You were this other person, and then you woke up as her mom, and like that's special.
Yeah, well, I had a revelation when I was her mom. I was like, oh my God, why didn't I ever see this before? You know, it was the mom went through a whole thing too. So, you know, um, there is the kind of science of dreaming in Tibetan Buddhism, burned too in the indigenous religion in Tibet. And one of the things that they say that is the dreams are divided up into basically three. The early night is about the past. The middle of the night is chaotic, and the dreams of the early morning, just before waking up, are about the future. And they say the more that you perfect tranquility meditation, the clearer these dreams about the future will become. And it's specifically like your future, things which will be meaningful to you only. It's not like you don't dream next week's news. It's like you, you may dream about a visit from a long lost friend or something, you know.
Yeah, it's less prophetic in the grand scheme, and it's more of like
It's
your
personalized.
like almost your anxieties or like these
It's
sensations.
almost like you're remembering the future.
Oh, that's cool. You know what I realized? Like we just spilled into conversation. I get the feeling that we're gonna have a really fun time already. But like we don't really have a format. You know, we just have a nice long conversation, and it's the best. You know, but if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit, just giving us your name and your creds and that's a really interesting book that we didn't get the chance to read, unfortunately. But just the title made our ears fly up. So
Well, yeah, I brought it out in case you had any questions, but
we have so many.
if your audience hasn't come across it, I would heartily recommend it. It's like 400 and something pages, and chock full of information. My name's Mike Crowley, and I come from Wales. I had a life as a software engineer, which brought me over to California, and I somehow got stuck here. And
Many do.
Yeah, people do. I may be going back to Wales soon. Let's see. While in Great Britain, back in the 60s, I ran into a Tibetan Lama, and first of all became friends with him and just used to hang out with him on that basis, going to the movies together and such. And then after a few years, I became his student and formally took the refuge and 5 vows called Pansil with him, and he gave me a Tibetan name, and I was formally made a lay member of the Kagyu lineage. I stayed with him for several years, eventually becoming ordained as a lama, a lay lama, not a monk, but an official teacher of the Kagyu lineage. Over the years, I have noticed several references to psychoactive substances being used within this tradition. And This is known in Sanskrit. The sacrament is known as Amrita. In Tibetan, it's called Dutsi. There is another tradition of um, psychoactive plants in Tibet, where they use indigenous plants, and it's called Chulen. Um, all of this stuff I found very interesting and filed away tidbits of information for many years until um, in the mid 90s I wrote up a paper on a myth which is about Amrita, about the sacred sacrament, and connects it with urine drinking. So my um, uh, interest was piqued by this because, as you probably know, there is a tradition of urine drinking connected with the Amanita muscaria mushroom.
I have
This,
a vague information. I don't know if it ties into it, but I think someone told me about. Not it wasn't amanita. It was the green mushroom, not the red one. I always compare. They're like a reference to a video game, like to Super Mario Brothers. It just has like those white dots, you know. But the green one was very
there,
poisonous, and they used to feed
yeah,
them to like a slave or something, and it would functionally kill them eventually. But then they would drink the urine, which would be kind of like filtered, and it would be.
well, um, the the if you ever see a green mushroom, it's infected with something. It's not, don't touch it anyway. But
Good
the
to know.
red mushroom with white spots, Amanita muscaria, contains a psychoactive substance called muscimol, which is not very toxic at all, but it is. If you you could kill yourself if you had a real lot of these mushrooms. You know, you're in a mushroom eating contest, you might, you know, verge on toxicity there. But
The winner will die.
yeah, but but they also, the mushrooms also contain a related substance called ibotenic acid, which is a little bit psychoactive, but a lot toxic. So um, your liver actually detoxifies the ibotenic acid by a process called decarboxylation and turns it into, guess what? Muscimol, the psychoactive stuff, which isn't toxic so much. So then you excrete it. It goes from the liver to the kidneys, to the bladder, and you piss it away. So you can actually have more muscimol in your urine than you ate in the mushroom. So it makes sense to recycle it. And when places where drugs are scarce, like Siberia, that's what they do. So um, it's not necessarily going through a slave, as it wouldn't. Um,
It wouldn't
Slaves are
kill
a
you.
bit thin on the ground in Siberia anyway, but and the mushroom's not that toxic. The toxicity is due to this ibotenic acid, and so they say that um, in some of the first writings on this that were done by a Swedish army officer said that 5 or 6 people can get high off the same dose of mushrooms just by drinking each other's urine.
That's
So it's
fascinating.
interesting to see this coming up in terms of this Tibetan myth, which is presumably a translation into Tibetan of an earlier Indian Buddhist myth, because it resembles in many ways an Indian myth called the churning of the ocean, in which the gods and demons, the gods and anti-gods, asuras, a bit like the Titans in ancient Greece. They churned the ocean, which was made of milk, by turning a mountain upside down, balancing it on the back of a giant turtle that was Vishnu, and wrapping a giant snake around it and hauling it back and forth so that it spun like a churning post for 1,000 years, and all these various substances came out of the ocean, like cream comes out of milk or butter comes out of cream. And they can all be seen as metaphors for Soma or Amrita. Soma was literally it just means juice, that which is squeezed out. And that was what the Vedas were about. But the Vedas wrote about red and blue entities, red and blue-throated, they call them. So this is covered in the book. They both the Hindu story about the churning of the ocean and the Buddhist version of it, and that was just the first one I found. There are other versions which reveal other little details too, but so that's where I'm coming from. I eventually compiled it into a book, and that's what I just showed you.
But so did you have some type of psychedelic experience that kind of propelled this into study, or is it just from hearing stories and putting the pieces together and discovering it that way?
I actually had some profound psychedelic experiences in the 60s, about the same time that I was discovering Tibetan Buddhism. And I was first of all interested in Zen Buddhism, but I happened to make a personal connection with the Tibetan Lama. So I had a profound experience, which I do describe in the book, actually, of something which I later read was known by Buddhists and spoken about by a Chinese Buddhist teacher in, I think, the 12th century, and it's called Indra's Net. And he described it and then said, as it is mentioned, as it is described in the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is even 1,000 years older than that. And so I had what you might call a vision of an infinite array of crystal spheres. Each sphere was perfectly transparent and reflected or refracted every other sphere in this universe. You could see the entire universe by just looking at one sphere. And I was not just that, it was kind of more profound than that, if I can even express it in words. Each sphere didn't just refract every other sphere, it was every other sphere. It was, and at the same time, I saw the entire place as this universe as being a field, like a quantum field, which was being modulated by all these various waves and waveforms from what I was seeing also as spheres. And so it was kind of the wave particle duality at the same time as Indra's net. And so I deduced from that either when I read what it was called and what it was, that other people had seen it, I thought, well, either I have found a sneaky back door into like some awesome mystical experience, or the guys that explained it back in the 12th century and before, they were taking these drugs too. So I continued my exploration on both counts, both of Buddhist meditation and um, like psychedelic exploration. There was a period when I first started when LSD was legal, and the stuff that we had was made by Zandots in Switzerland, and after that we discovered that we had quite a lot of psychedelic mushrooms in Britain, especially in Wales, where I'm from. So we found those to be quite an adequate substitute for the LSD we'd had previous.
So
Interesting comparison.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever had like real LSD, so I can't speak, but I find it interesting. Like a lot of people seem, let's say the traditional ideals of Buddhism or any religion really is kind of like a clean living, and then psychedelics are kind of viewed as a drug. So there's a lot of times in people's minds where these things don't mix, and I'd love to, because for me, I don't think I've found a proper mix for them either, but I know that it's there. One is definitely leading into the other in some
Well,
kind of information sense.
I think not only do they overlap, my book is not about whether they should, but it's about the history of psychedelic use within Buddhism, the actual documented use, and in some cases I show that there are Japanese drawings from the 9th century which enable you to identify the actual species that they were using.
Oh, wow.
Like Psilocybes liniformans and Psilocybe argentipes. These are quite definitely depicted in the art of the 9th century. So there's a lot of linguistic evidence too. And one little linguistic item: the later tantras spoke of a fivefold amrita, a fivefold elixir. Amrita, by the way, means elixir of immortality. It's just literally immortality. Mri, die, mrita is like death. The actual word for death is mrityu, but amrita is no death, so immortality. So not to be confused with amanita, which is Greek for mushroom. So by the time of the late tantras, they were speaking of a fivefold amrita. That is to say that 5 different elixirs were mixed in it. It was called panchamrita, fivefold amrita. And this has come down to us as the English word punch, meaning a mixed drink. It was originally not related to the fist punch, which comes from a Greek.
That's funny. I just thought it because you wrap your 5 fingers, so I thought it meant like.
Right. Yeah, but that's very interesting, a linguistic coincidence, I think.
That's
But pancha is Sanskrit for 5, as in the area called the Punjab, which is Pancha Abha, 5 rivers. So don't let anyone try and tell you it's pronounced Punjab. It's not. It's Punjab. 5 rivers. So 5 amritas, Panchamrita. By the time the British had invaded India and occupied it with the British Raj, this meant 5 alcoholic drinks. And that's how it was picked up by the British Army as punch, and how it entered the English language. There's a footnote in the Oxford English Dictionary all about it. I was delighted to see that they derived it from Sanskrit Panchamrita. So part of my book is trying to decipher what these 5 drugs might have been. I cover 72 different plants altogether, and also point out that such things as the cult of Tara may have been an ayahuasca-like sacrament that's based on acacia bark, because Tara seems to be associated with acacia. One of the earliest forms of Tara is called Kadiravani Tara, which means Tara of the acacia grove, or sound, or color. It's very hard to tell, but it doesn't seem to be good Sanskrit. It's probably what's known as Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit, and many attempts have been made to parse that particular word, but it does seem that she is related to Ishtar and Inanna, in that they were worshipped in acacia groves too.
I never made that connection. Tara refers to like a female Buddhist, like a Buddha, like a Buddha in her own right.
Not just Buddha either. She seems to be old and is part of Hinduism and Jainism too. So I had a book that was published in India years ago called Tara and Ishtar, and made a very good argument that Tara may have been imported from Sumeria. And I'm pretty sure that Inanna was. There was an old Indian goddess of around the... there are coins with her on from like the 6th century and before. And in India, she was called Nana, and she was often shown riding a lion. And Inanna was associated with lions too. So it's quite possible that these goddesses were brought into India by merchants, which is possible. That's why Tara got her name, which actually means star in Sanskrit. There are later Buddhist etymologies which suggest that a name means she who ferries across, but that's not the original meaning at all. So there are theories that Mesopotamian traders may have found their way to India by the stars, and so they brought that goddess with her and called her the star, which is, by the way, Venus. Literally, the word for Venus in Sanskrit is Tara, and if you look at Ishtar, she was also the planet Venus. There's a lot of correspondences, including the use of acacia, the acacia groves, which is apparently still used for purposes of intoxication, if you like, in the Middle East. It is used by the Bedouin Arabs, so I have been informed.
Interesting.
So there are So that would be one of the components I would imagine in this five-fold concoction. I also cover the use of psychoactive grasses. There are grasses which have psychoactivity, particularly some grasses in India, the sacred power grass, Power Kinusuroides. It's said by myth to have a touch of soma about it, and it makes me wonder, what's that mean? Is it slightly psychoactive? And I found out why. That it can be infected by a fungus, an endocytic fungus called acrimonium, which produces substances similar to those that are produced by ergot, but much more efficiently. And so if they had a way to separate, maybe by simple solution, I don't know, they could separate ergine or something, which is lysergic amide as found in morning glory seed.
Oh, I think we lost you here.
Is he gone? Connection lost.
Da, 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 da. Oh, I think we got you back.
Can you hear us?
Oh, hi. Yes,
Yeah.
I can. I didn't lose you at all.
No.
Okay, good.
We're back.
You just froze on our end for a second.
So it's quite possible that having a touch of soma means that some of this species, some individuals of this species will have it and others won't. And they would just have to pass down the information about which patch of grass to use. And by the way, I reminded myself the Hawaiian baby wood rose. It's not really Hawaiian. It comes from Bengal and the eastern side of the Indian subcontinent. There is, it's quite possible that was the substance known as the soma creeper. Soma lata, it was called, the soma vine. Not much research has been done into that at all. There are references to various kinds of psychoactive substances all over the scriptures, Hindu, Buddhist, and even like Taoist stuff. But you said that the religions propose a clean living.
It seems
maybe
I'm
that's
wrong.
why these things were considered secret. It wasn't like they broadcast them and spoke of them openly. They wrote tantras, which are like deeply secret. They have, according to some writing, in Tibet in the 11th century, someone wrote to explain tantras and said they have 7 levels of secrecy. Now, that it is well known that they use a secret code called Sandyabhasa, but a lot of tantras are actually shuffled in their pages too. You don't know which page to read after next. So they seem to use a lot of puns, and if you can read Sanskrit, it seems like the puns are not that hard. And also, significantly, I found this out between the first and second editions, so it's there in the second edition. There are scriptures which quite clearly state these goddesses are actually plants, not just the plant species, but they also symbolize the experience of the plants. So this goddess is what getting high on this drug seems like. That actually comes out quite explicitly in some traditions.
Well,
makes
even
sense.
like ayahuasca, it comes in the form of a snake most of the time. So a lot of the depictions of ayahuasca is with a snake entity, a very, and then you see the serpent is a very common theme in a lot of religious texts and stories. So it's just
Yeah,
that alone
I
is
I've
fascinating.
wondered about that myself,
Yeah.
and had um, had some lengthy conversations about that. There's there's behind me on the wall, by the way, is an ayahuasca manta. It's an altar cloth that's been dyed with ayahuasca and then had concentrated ayahuasca painted on top of it.
That's
So,
awesome.
and if if I ever wanted to have an ayahuasca trip, we could always just like drink the laundry.
Yeah.
So
It's beautiful, but it's funny to think.
it's very well done. It's phenomenal, I think. Um, I have a friend who is an ayahuasquero, a shaman in Brazil, and uh, he makes some exquisite ayahuasca, which doesn't make you in the slightest bit queasy. Definitely don't throw up on his stuff.
Wow.
Um, but it's really not my um, cup of tea, if you like.
I was really hoping you'd say
I
that.
get too many side effects with it.
Okay.
So, my friend, the shaman, suggested that I just take a lot more.
I
That's his,
That's a lot of people's advice when it comes to ayahuasca. So
Yeah.
you haven't drank enough yet.
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, that's right.
I've heard that
that's
too many
right.
times.
But I wanted to go into all these entities and all these depictions in different texts and different religions. They all come down to some weird animal human morphism in a sense. And it's so when you take a psychedelic drug, you have these kind of visions or these kind of blurred lines between separation between you and whatever. That's for me after my psychedelic experiences, it makes so much sense that religious texts at the roots started from some type of visionary experience. And even when you go into the story of Adam and Eve, the forbidden fruit just sounds to me like a psychedelic experience that she had.
Right. It. I'm with you as far as the myth is concerned, and these apparent revelations and stuff. There is a layer of the psyche which, is full of those archetypal energies. But when it comes to the actual iconography of deities, I find that it's, at least in the Buddhist and Hindu context, they have the number of arms necessary to hold all the implements, and things like that. But
Oh, that's funny.
the
There's like a
implements
practicality to it
themselves,
sometimes.
yes, but it's like look at what implements they are carrying, and um, do they have any hidden meaning? Also, do they um, do they have any punning meaning? For instance, um, a deity might be holding a book. Now, book in Sanskrit is patra. Now, atapatra means a parasol or a mushroom. So, could a book just be like saying shrooms? You just like drop the first part of the word off. So it could be a tapatra or patra. Uh, there's an interesting story in the book called the 84 Mahasiddhas, um, and it's about all these Buddhist masters who um, were ordinary people, or they were like broken, defective people, or they were kings, or whatever. They just took their own particular personality and turned it into enlightenment. All very interesting stuff. A lot of it's very symbolic and weird. Um, Several of them are about Amrita, are about using this sacrament. The very last story in the book is about someone who isn't even a Buddhist. He's a Hindu, an alchemist called Vyali, and he lives in a town called Patra, which, or in other versions, Apatra. Um, so this could easily be a corrupted, not necessarily corrupted like accidentally, but deliberately foreshortened Atapatra, parasol or mushroom. Anyway, the whole story of Vyali is there in order to explain how Buddhists got hold of the recipe for making Amrita. Because this guy, Vyali, had discovered it, and it involved a red flower, which which was provided by his wife, who was a prostitute, and then he makes the elixir of immortality, eats it himself, gives some to his wife and some to his horse. So he's got an immortal wife and an immortal horse, and they go off into some distant island and live happily ever after until this Buddhist Mahasiddha called Nagarjuna goes there with his magic flying sandals, and he swaps one of the flying sandals for the recipe. So that's how Buddhists got the recipe for Amrita. I mean, I'm sure there's a really common sense story hidden in there somehow, but the story we've got is quite extraordinary.
It seems like you're just dealing with so much. I mean, obviously, there's so much time in between the truth and you trying to figure it out, but it is this kind of like scavenger hunt also, and it's fueled with all the imagination of the individuals and all the etymology and all the literal sounds, like you're saying. Sometimes there's just like puns or abbreviations, and obviously a lot of personal imagery, of the time that's going to fuel. Like you said, sometimes they just got a bunch of arms because they need to hold all the things that are important. It's not about the arms, it's about the things. So it's like there's so much detective work involved in this, and you're even saying soma. Like when you said that other plant, the grass with the fungus, like is soma like. The first thing I thought of was not necessarily the imagery or the invoked like deities, but more the feeling. Because if someone takes like LSD and then shrooms and then salvia and then ayahuasca and iboga, there's literally common feelings, and it could be that simple as well. They're just like, oh, it's the same. It's a similar feeling. It's soma-like. I take soma. It's a thing that might be a deity or a kind of feeling, a name of something
But
ambiguous.
they said, I mean, what it actually said was that it had a touch of soma to it.
So it was more scientific, if
it-
anything.
Yeah, so it's like I interpret it as meaning, well, some of these species do and some of these don't, and it's still important in some Buddhist initiations. Like you were given this, the 2 pieces of this grass to put under your pillow and under your mattress the night before you have an initiation, and then your dreams are interpreted. And if they're inauspicious, you don't get the initiation.
I like
But It's also said that that's what the Buddha used for his seat when he sat in meditation and became enlightened, was bunches of this grass called durva or kusha. It has a few different names in Sanskrit.
I wonder if this is a kind of like an obvious question, but it's referring to the elixir of immortality, and it seems like that's interchangeable with enlightenment. It's not necessarily to live forever, but there's this kind of like what are they referring to? What do you think is being referred to when they talk about immortality?
Well, of course, it's not literal immortality, and
Damn it.
it's a term that came. Oh well, sometimes it's construed like that.
Hmm.
That certain people who did imbibe with this elixir are said to be still alive as a result of it. And so Padmasambhava, who would be like, I don't know, about 1,500 years old now. Is supposed to be still around subduing demons and the like. So I think to be honest, I think he's slacking. Uh, but
Good point.
but then again, I to sidetrack a little. When climbing sacred mountains in China with an old friend of mine, we were actually introduced to a gentleman who had been sitting in meditation for over 1,200 years. And he was 99 years old when he sat down in meditation. Some people may have said he's died, but he looks perfectly alive.
Ooh.
The clothes, his robes are hanging off him in shreds, but he looked younger than me. I mean, younger than I am now. He looked about 40 something. But
So you came
his
across
name,
this individual?
I'm sorry.
You came across him during your hike?
No, 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 no.
Hmm.
We were hiking around this mountain called Johasan,
Okay.
and we came to this one temple, the original oldest temple in the area, founded by a Korean monk called Kim Gogak. And we entered it. There was a very dark meditation hall. We bowed and sat down in meditation, and we meditated for a while. And when we got up, there was this monk who'd been standing there the whole time and wandered over to us and said, "Would you like to have tea with the abbot?" And we went, "Oh, well, yeah, fair enough. We'll have tea with the abbot." So we walk into this like dining room, which is a total contrast to the dark meditation hall. It's all like light and airy. And there's about a dozen people sitting all around this long table, and they're all waiting for us. And they tell us that there's a young nun who acts as an interpreter. And they say that they'd heard that there were two foreigners, two white guys in the area, and wondered what we were doing there. And because people had said that we were Buddhists. And we said, yeah, it's true. And they were amazed. And they said, there are American Buddhists. And I said, well, I'm not American, but sure, there are lots. And so we had tea. We, chatted for a while. And just as we were about to leave, the abbot says via the interpreter, "Would you like to meet the founder?" And I'm like, toujours la politesse. So we said, why, of course. Me knowing that the place was founded like 1,300 years ago almost, and I thought it must be a mistake in translation.
Yeah.
But they took us to this like room behind the shrine, the meditation hall. There's a little room where the guy is just sitting there, just sitting, meditating, or in the position of meditation with completely normal flesh and skin. This is not a mummy. This looks like a guy who's just been sitting there for a couple of hours, maybe, but he was going to get up anytime soon.
And I mean, you didn't see him do anything else the whole
No.
time you were there?
No, we were introduced to him, and like Reverend Kim Gogak. This is Mike Crowley. This is Steve Aldrich, and so we were formally introduced. He didn't respond, but that's I just a little aside there, because we were talking about immortality, and this guy he could be well on his way to immortality. I don't know, it's hard to tell.
It is. I love that you made the distinction. You're like, well, he looked like he was meditating. I don't really know what he was doing. I found that funny. It's an intelligent distinction. Maybe he's just doing his taxes in his head. Who knows?
Quite so. So
That was a fun digression.
so the term immortality was devised by whoever composed the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is the oldest of the four Vedas, and it's basically a bunch of chants which are spoken, sung somewhere in between speech and singing, but it's kind of chanted rhythmically at the Soma ceremony called the Yajna or Agnihotra. Now, this ceremony took place over about a week, and it's always done in the open air. It starts with the sacrifice of an animal, which is usually tethered to a post and then beheaded. And it's followed by a fire ritual. The hearth is made of 108 bricks in a particular shape. The bricks are the normal shape, but they're arranged in the shape of a bird, an eagle, which relates to the myth of the bird that stole the Soma, which incidentally seems to parallel the Nordic myth of the eagle that stole the mead of poetry. Something I always have intended to look into, but haven't really. Anyway, in this ceremony, they have two stones, grinding stones, and they grind a substance which they call the Soma plant, and mix it with water or milk, and catch the resulting liquor on a cowhide, and then scoop it up and give some to the fire and offer it to the fire god and various other gods, and then they put the most of it into a large bowl called the ocean, samudra, which means ocean, and they each have a cup of it, and they all get high on it and end up with a freestyle rap contest. So that is that's what we'd call it nowadays, but it's pretty much what they did, and they had to abide by certain metric structures like you get in poetry and so on. They didn't rhyme though. Anyway, the Sama Veda, the second Veda, is a rearranged version of those. It's just in the order in which you would use them in the ritual. Then the Yajur Veda is a bunch of commentaries and things, very interesting asides on the ceremony and tells us a lot about the various rudras, which seem to be mushrooms. It says there are red rudras and there are blue-throated rudras, and they are known to um, the boys that fetch water from the spring. No, the girls that fetch water from the spring, and the boys that tend the cows. So the boys that tend the cows um, will know about the blue-throated rudras, and the girls who fetch water know about the red rudras. And there's other such tempting tidbits like this throughout the Yajurveda. The Atharva Veda is mostly um, evil averting spells. Not much of interest about drugs in there, but interesting otherwise.
Very. I didn't know that it was like kind of in sequence as such, and like kind of decrypting one from the next, like a kind of
There
like
are
a
also
additions almost.
yeah, but there are also like commentaries, separate commentaries, like the Brahmanas comment on the Rig Veda, and they tell you interesting things like who you can buy soma from, how to cheat the soma seller, because the soma seller is evil, and you know you've got to cheat him because he will do it to you. So get your retaliation in first. Oh, it's evil. It's really evil. And so it tells you, like, for instance, it tells you to do a bait and switch. Like, show him your best cow, and then when he produces the soma, snatch it from him and give him your worst cow. So,
That's fascinating.
if there are no cows involved and it's just a monetary transaction, it tells you to beat him with a stick
Wow.
until he gives you the money back. And it doesn't stop there. It actually tells you what kind of stick to use, which is a mottled bamboo. If you were wondering, are you ever going to do this to your dealer?
I was hoping it was some spiritual reason, but it sounds like like it's just a good stick. You just want to make sure it doesn't break on you.
Stick, yes.
A real switch, as it were.
A lot, actually. It's always assumed, or not always, but often assumed, that the Vedas are full of spiritual information and advice. They're not. They're not. They're basically like the prayers are for more cattle, faster horses, prettier wives, and better luck at dice. It's like really, it's like not much different from the ancient Romans, really.
It does sound like a kind of
With
black magic, like just kind of getting an easier life,
Yeah.
sacrificing an animal here and there.
Absolutely, and it wasn't until the Vedanta, which is like after the peak period of the Vedas. Vedanta may well have been like a recrudescence of indigenous wisdom, just expressed in Sanskrit, in Vedas language. And the Vedanta literature, the Upanishads, are genuinely spiritual. They are about, far loftier topics than are spoken of in the Vedas.
It seems maybe more internally practical and maybe a little more complex and spiritual, like you said. Whereas like the second Veda you said was called the Soma Veda. That's literally telling you like the order in which the first one was, and then the last
Yes.
one is like, oh, by the way, like you might be opening some portals to some scary places. So here's like how you dodge the evil, and somewhere in between is beat the seller with a stick.
Yeah.
Definitely not
So
as spiritually.
The second one is the Sama Veda.
Sama, sorry.
Sama is an adjective from Soma.
Ah, okay,
That
that makes
means
sense.
the Veda of Soma.
Oh, okay.
So,
And the word soma
but
you said referred to like the actual word. I don't remember. You said it refers to like a liquid or like a
it means juice. It
Juice.
means something which is pressed out.
Okay.
Um,
Oh,
and
okay. Specifically,
Hmm.
like the essence of like a fruit or of anything, I guess,
yes,
like any kind of.
yes, absolutely, yes.
That's
Um,
really cool.
the uh, Tibetan for um, Amrita, though, is Dutsi, which means demon juice,
Demon juice.
which is
Whoever named that had a bad
weird.
trip. They go, nah, man, this is demon juice.
But even like ayahuasca, some refer to it as the vine of the dead, and some other refer to it as the vine of the souls. Like it has these two kind of opposites to it, you know?
Yeah, connected, but definitely colored, more lighter or darker.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting.
And there's a lot of, as I say, puns like um, blue throat and blue stem are very close in Sanskrit. One is Nilakanta and the other is Nilakanta. So
That's
they're very very close and an obvious pun. When you will see some goddesses, for instance, Dakinis, drinking out of a skull cup. They are sometimes said to be drinking Amrita and sometimes said to be blood. Like, um, well, like, whose blood is that? Where's its blood come from? And there are actually commentaries that tell you. They don't always tell you the same thing, but they actually do say this is the blood of the enemy, or sometimes the blood of the unrighteous. Well, this takes a little tiny bit of unpacking. Um, Enemy is like not the most common word for enemy, which is Ari, but quite a poetic term for enemy is Amitra. Friend is Mitra, Amitra is not friend. So this is just a pun on Amrita.
Hmm.
So what about the unrighteous? Well, the word for unrighteous is Anrita, and with an N, Anrita. So it's if you speak Sanskrit, if you can read Sanskrit, it's also bloody obvious.
Yeah,
They're not really making a, a huge attempt to hide it from you.
it also could be kind of poetic, you know, like the juice of something, like the juice of a human is the blood. You know, it just might be
Yeah.
a way of using the word blood in a kind of with a little poetic license. You know, there's so
Yeah.
many possibilities. You're referring. I'm curious as well. Like you're referring to the blue throat, and I'm a little bit familiar with the story of Nilkant, like this mythology of swallowing the poison, air quotes,
Yes,
and then the
yes,
throat
yes,
actually
yes.
turning blue.
And that poison features largely in the Tibetan version of the churning of the ocean, which is in a text called the Dreame Zhaotreng, which is the Immaculate Crystal Garland. The titles of Tibetan texts, by the way, seldom have anything to do with their contents. So,
They want it to
anyway,
pop.
this is
Need a good
one
title.
of the first things that was ever translated from Tibetan into English by there was a German explorer called Schlagentweit who came across this text and brought it back from Tibet. Um, and it was a facsimile copy of that book was published in the 1960s in about, 50 copies or something. I happened to pick up one, and this is how I read of the urine drinking episode, and I went, "Hello, something up here," and so that led to the whole rest of this.
It's very
Um,
serendipitous.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
yeah. Uh, so I've gone on to discover other hidden references to mushroom in texts, like um, the Bhagavad Purana, which book 10 is all about Krishna, is where we get all the Krishna myths from. And some of those seem to describe the shift from the Vedic use of Amanita muscaria to the use of the more indigenous Psilocybe cubensis. And I'm thinking particularly of the myth of Giri Govardhana, where um, Krishna becomes a chatra. It says he lifts a mountain above his head, which is Giri is mountain. Govardhana means um, abundant in cattle, cattle galore hill, and he lifts it above his head and becomes a chatra. Well, chatra is has two main meanings. One is umbrella. The other one is mushroom. And so, if only
It's like
if
obvious
you
the further
get
you go.
this.
It's
There he is, dark blue, holding a mountain over his head, and he's become guess what? A mushroom. It's a blue stem mushroom, and he is known as a cowherd, and the mushroom, the hill is um, abundant in cows and so on. So along comes Indra and fights him over some offerings, and Indra throws a tempest at the area, and he becomes this mushroom parasol, and eventually the Indra has to give up. And he says all sorts of interesting things like, oh, if we allow him to behave the way he wants, people will attain mystic states without the use of ritual.
That sounds like a one-for-one parallel for the Adam and Eve story. Like if they eat of the fruit of knowledge, they will be like us. You know, and it says us for some reason instead of me, and like you think it's God talking, but it seems like this kind of like someone essentially like creating some kind of knowledge barrier, and it's like no, you have to go through the proper channels. You can't just take this sacrament and suddenly be enlightened. That's not how we do things here.
Right. But it seems that Krishna wins, and Indra's wife, Mrs. Indra, Indrani, is her name. That's all. It just means Mrs. Indra,
That's it.
and so she says, "Oh, perhaps he'd be a fitting playmate for our son." And they kind of make an uneasy truce. And the interesting thing is, immediately afterwards, the next chapter, there is a speech from Kamadhenu, the wish-granting cow, who is also called Surabi, like the most beautiful. And she is a cow, and but she was one of the things that were made at this churning of the ocean. And strangely, her udders don't give milk, they give amrita. And she gives this eulogy in favor of Krishna and says how, he's opened up this way to enlightenment, if you like. So it's almost like his, let's say, a kind of open secret, a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's about the mushroom, really, kind of thing, which I'm amazed has got lost, or seemingly lost. And there are other little giveaways, like his when he's a baby, he's placed under a cart to put him in the shade out of the way. They put him underneath the cart, but with his tender shoot-like legs, he pushes the cart over. This is like the traditional, like mushroom under a paving stone kind of thing. Also, when he's born, he's covered in powdered cow dung, and mystic syllables, protective syllables are written into it with cow urine. I mean, this sounds like something which has grown up out of a cow pat.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which is where you would
so
find the psychedelic mushrooms that would grow out of cattle, the cattle dung. And then what's always blows my mind is that the cow is the sacred animal in India. It's
and worshipped from the rear.
mm-hmm.
Did you
Wow.
know that?
I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
You
No.
worship the arse of the cow, not the face.
Wow.
That's just inherently funny. I don't even know.
And the goddess Lakshmi in some places is on her annual day she is worshipped in the form of a pile of cow dung.
Whoa.
That's funny.
Yeah, so
Oh man, I was in India for that day in the north, and they usually they clean the cow shit because there's cows just wandering the streets, and they didn't that day, and I didn't know why, and you just reminded me now, and I wonder if it's the connection.
that's probably it.
That's crazy. They're like, nope, sacred.
Lakshmi has a son called Kardama, which means cow shit. I mean, you can have a good reason to call yourself call your son cow shit. No doubt she loved him and everything,
That's it. There must be a good reason. Yeah, Lakshmi. I remember Lakshmi being this kind of. Obviously, this is a simplification, but this is representing some kind of fortune or prosperity. I guess recently, or my exposure of it is that it's a kind of financial gain. But is there a connection there?
It's weird, actually. You should mention that. That she is also known by the name Shri, which means fortune, good fortune. And this goes back a long way that to this myth of Krishna with the clash with Indra and Krishna. And Indra says, because of the influence of this cow herd, the village of Vrindavan has become intoxicated with wealth. It's a weird choice of words, but a lot of wealth deities also seem to be apotheoses of drugs, of just a deification of a particular plant or drug. So we have, for instance, White Mahakala, who is a wealth deity, who jumps up and down on the prostrate form of Ganesha, and wish-granting gems come out of all of Ganesha's bodily orifices. And there are other reasons for associating Ganesha in Hinduism with drugs, like with Amanita muscaria particularly, because he has one white tusk and a red head. It's not often mentioned that his head is red, but it sounds like just another
wink.
Another wink and a nudge. Exactly. Yes.
There seems to be so many of these winks.
Yeah.
There are.
It's mind-blowing.
Your eyes are open to them. It's like
it's everywhere.
Especially with these like Sanskrit puns and probably slang words too, which are not recorded anywhere, which you can kind of infer sometimes.
My question too is how did we lose this knowledge, I guess, and how do we lose these connections to these substances? Is it because we demonized it as a society and we kind of brushed it out, or did it lose its translation at some point?
I have to think that it's not exactly lost. I think there are traditions which maintain their use in secret. there are um, it's hard to lose some things actually if it's like in Wales. Um, we have mushrooms everywhere. We have Psilocybe semilanciata, which is the liberty cap mushroom. Doesn't grow on cow dung, grows on decaying mats of ryegrass. So it grows everywhere. And the only thing is that the land mustn't dry out at all any time during the year. So you're looking for damp areas where the ryegrass is, and they're everywhere. Now, I remember when I was about 9 years old, playing with my kids from my neighborhood. There's a girl about my age, and she says, "My little brother eats mushrooms." And I turned to him, and he's about 5 years old. I turned to him and I said, "You don't, do you?" He said, "Yes," grinning. "Yes," he said. And I said, "Why on earth do you do that?" And he said, "They help me see the fairies." And I thought the child's insane, and like ignored it totally until years later when I thought, wait a bit. So it's often like the children and people on the margins of society who will maintain some of these things. Actually, further to that, when I knew what these mushrooms were, and by the way, in Britain, there are no small brown mushrooms that are poisonous, unlike in the United States. So, here we've got things like Galerina autumnalis, which grows right amongst wavy caps, amongst cyanescens. So you've got to be careful. In Britain, you can just gobble all the little mushrooms until something happens, which is obviously what this kid did. So a little later, well, I'm in my 20s, and we're looking for mushrooms on a Welsh hillside, and a kid comes up to a friend of mine and says, "What are you doing, mister?" He says, "I'm looking for mushrooms." And the kid said, "Bit old for that, aren't you?"
Wow.
That's funny.
So, yeah, so it's hard to lose the knowledge if it's right there under your feet.
I think you're right. I think it got pushed into secret because I'm based on probably the societal laws of that time and the going beliefs of the power structures. I can see it in parallels even today. There are a lot of ceremonies of mushroom ceremonies, ayahuasca ceremonies are usually done more in secret, even in today's times.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know though.
Sorry, my cat keeps adjusting my laptop lid.
Yeah, no, we noticed it's adorable. I just I was thinking. I mean, this is a stretch, and I'm sure it's kind of you kind of need like a conspiratorial mindset to kind of guess a pattern and then see if it survives with the information you have, in a sense. But we're talking about the connection with these deities of prosperity and how they're often connected with a psychedelic sacrament or something. And I'm wondering, now that you mentioned those other books, maybe it became demonized because it became a source of prosperity. Maybe selling a certain plant that gives you a certain psychedelic experience, a certain a very enlightening experience, especially back then when there was just less stimulation in general, that could make someone, maybe there's an entire book about how to buy it because it became a very lucrative business, and then maybe that became demonized because it became a way to create that division, just one more way to create rich people.
I somehow doubt it myself. I mean, in the Vedas and the Brahmanas, when they speak about buying it, they are definite outsider people. They're not part of the culture. They are they're non-Aryan people from the northeast, from the northeast, and we don't know who they are. It's possible that they are um, the people who had gods who were turned into demons, like the the devas, the gods of the Arya people who migrated into India about 2,500 BC. Um, the stories they write about the gods fighting with the anti-gods. These anti-gods sound like they could be like rival tribes around them. There's the Darnayans, the Datyus, the Nagas, the Asuras. There are several of them. Um, we know there is a tribe called the Nagas, but it's difficult to see if they are anything to do at all with the Nagas that the Devas fought. Now, but it's these like non-caste, marginalized tribal people who always seem to be the source of the drugs. They are the people who live in the forest and know all the plants, you know. There are even descriptions of certain tribes, like the Shavari tribe, who are there's a deity, a female deity called Parna Shavari, which means Parna means leaf, can also mean feather, but it's definitely leaf in this. And so she is often shown with a skirt made of cannabis leaves. So it is, there is a definite association between, marginalized people, tribal people, women, barmaids, and prostitutes particularly, and the people who deal with the unsavory members of society. They are the ones that go to for the drugs.
Wow.
By the way, the lowest of all castes I found out, just incidentally, is the bastard offspring of a Brahmin woman and a flute player.
Interesting. What?
That's a way to go full circle on the flute there. That's so there's oh wow. That's I don't even know what to do with that. That's fascinating, but hilarious. And a little sad, obviously. Casts are a weird thing. But wow. I didn't know it got deeper than that. Like you could have it's like the societal class within a caste becomes a lower caste.
Oh,
that's complicated. It's complex hatred right there.
How complicated it gets. Now, you'd think there would just be one caste of fishing net menders, but there's two. There's the menders who do it from right to left, and the ones who do it from left to right.
Oh,
and
wow.
they cannot intermarry.
Oh, wow.
The caste of sesame oil extractors, are divided into those who use a ladle and those who use a spigot.
I would love to know the I use this word loosely, but I'd love to know the logic behind this.
Yes. Yeah, you can write, like highly emotional romance novels about the torment.
Oh, for sure.
A star-crossed lovers who are from different branches of the net mending caste. Yes, absolutely. It would, probably make a Bollywood movie out of it.
I see the parallels of our society. We have weird things that are just like proper and improper, and we have a little bit more open here, I guess. But there's some places where just crossing your feet, for example, is a big insult to a lot of people. You know.
Oh yes,
So it's
absolutely.
so these are, I think, are
Showing
just like
someone on your
societal.
feet. Oh, very
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
not to do that. Yes, where you sit on your feet so you don't expose your souls to anyone.
Yeah.
People are weird, man.
That's the human condition.
I'm so fascinated. Like you're I can't wait to read this book because it feels like it mixes like obviously like just history and anthropology and etymology and a bit of psychology, a bit of like how do you understand colloquialisms and vernacular from literally millennia ago, and then there's all this kind of like maybe a tad of like this psychonaut mentality of
I would hope so.
chemistry
I would
even.
yeah, I would hope so. I'm trying to bring that stuff into focus. I'm writing another book at the moment, which is, I'm not sure it's one book or two. It's either a Buddhism for psychonauts or psychedelics for Buddhists.
Yeah, you don't know.
You know,
I think it
I'm
could be
thinking
two books.
Like one of those, like, you remember, you're too young, but in the 60s and 70s there were like books called Ace Doubles. They were produced by the Ace Publishing Company, and they were two books. So, and they were like, they had two front covers.
Oh yeah,
Just
yeah.
like you turned it upside down and it was a different book.
Interesting.
So maybe I'll do that. You know, maybe,
I would. It'd be
let's-
very clever. Like if you'd have to kind of think about the way you write it, so that they could possibly kind of
Right.
merge in the middle, and then it's like some kind of almost like a palindrome in terms of the.
It's very psychedelic.
Yeah. It'd be a very strange. Like it doesn't matter which way you read it. It more matters which one do you identify with more. If you're a Buddhist, like here's your introduction to psychedelics. If you're a psychonaut, here's your introduction into Buddhism, and then the kind of
That's
twist.
what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It was like somebody I know is in the Student Psychedelic Society. I can't remember what it's actually called, and she's she runs the group at Princeton, and she remarked that Buddhism seems to be a natural fit for psychedelics, and for you know, having done a bunch of psychedelics, Buddhism seems to make sense. Well, that's kind of how it happened to me, and I was also fortunate to have a very open-minded and not dogmatic teacher who I was able to spend like all day Friday with for several years. Wow. So I had a teacher all to myself long before most people had heard about Tibetan Buddhism. I got it like straight from the horse's mouth, if you'll excuse the expression, but yeah, straight from the Lama's mouth, which gives you an entirely different, like, wrong impression.
Yeah, excuse the pun of the expression at this point. When you first said the word llama, I thought of a llama, like the animal, and I was like, nope, Sammy, wrong context.
But Sasha Shulgin was terrible for puns, and he once said to me, like, a 1L Lama is a spiritual teacher in Tibet. A 2L Lama is an Andean camelid. What's a 3L Lama? I said, I don't know. And he said, a big fire in Boston. A 3L Lama.
I don't get it.
A 3-alarm fire.
Oh, a 3-alarmer.
You gotta use the accent.
Son of a bitch. I got it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'm so embarrassed I had to get walked into the punchline. I've failed myself. No, that's really something.
My fault for telling it wrong.
No, I think you told it right. That's
Yeah.
But I'm wondering. I don't want to open up a can of worms here because I guess we're coming up on an hour and a half already. But I'm just curious. Like, I feel like the information in, let's say, Christianity, just give like a basic or a very common religion, has a kind of morality to it, and obviously that's present in Buddhism. But you're saying like, you know, the psychedelic experience kind of lends itself to Buddhism and vice versa, probably. It seems like obviously Buddhism has a kind of process, and it's more structured in its common form. I think Christianity and a lot of other religions are as in depth, but let's say the cookie cutter version of it, the mainstream version of it, loses a lot of that. But with Buddhism, it always has a forward facing mentality of being a science, sort of, and very much complements the chaotic, mystical, and spiritual experiences of psychedelics. It complements it in a way that it rearranges it or maybe consolidates it. It doesn't complement it.
It's a way of experiencing and dealing with what is. And
Yeah.
psychedelics can amplify your experience of what is, and practice Buddhist meditation allows you to take a mental backseat, if you like, and just allow things to be, allow it to present itself in whatever way, without interfering. It's a kind of involuntary vipassana, if you like. If
We've
you
said
try
that
to interfere
already,
with it, you will come a cropper. So you just have to let it manifest, let it be, and the practice of tranquility meditation is also very, very useful in
Cat's hilarious.
reaching over to grab you on the screen is figured out that you're people and he's trying to touch you. So,
What's your cat's name, if you don't mind me asking?
oh, hang on. His name is Blake.
Huh? Like the poet?
It's named after Blake.
Sorry, you cut out. What did you say?
I said the cat's name is Blake. Is named after the poet William Blake.
Nice.
Good call, Sammy.
Because he
Yeah, I
looked
guessed
like
it.
when he was a kitten. He looked like a little tiger.
Wow.
So it was like tiger,
Burning
burning
bright,
bright in the forests of the night.
That's
What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? It's a terrible, terrible eye rhyme there. I always dislike that.
me too. It's kind of jarring.
Oh, fearful symmetry. That's what it is. Frame thy fearful symmetry. Yeah. You ever read the comic Watchmen?
No, I just saw the movie. I haven't actually read
I haven't.
Oh, the comic has so much more in it. There's a chapter called Fearful Symmetry. It's brilliantly done so that there's a full 2-page spread in the middle. Go forward and backward from there. Every page is laid out in a mirror image. In every frame, the person who was speaking in one frame is now listening. The person who was in the foreground is now in the background.
Holy
You know,
That's
and
amazing.
you won't notice it unless it's pointed out to you. It
Wow.
works so well.
And not even pointed out clearly. Like just kind of hinted at.
In
like
secret.
In secret. Yet again.
Like-
What the fuck is with people? Just
That's-
tell me what's going on.
That's the mystery behind it. That's the childish ways of us, I guess, keeping
Well,
everything an
I mean-
adventure.
Yeah.
I know because Alan told me about it when he wrote it.
That's so cool.
One of my activities in the past was that I wrote for Marvel Comics, Marvel UK for Doctor Who Weekly, and that's how I got to know Alan Moore.
Cool.
And
No way.
and so, but there's other things that happened, like in the first issue of that that story. Um, he writes a lot of detail. All the background is all written. And in the background of one scene, there is um, a plumber's van, and it says Gordian Knot Plumbing Company, which he thought was a little funny aside. Um, the first thing you see in the first image in the book is a smiley button with a splash of blood across it. And um, a little bit later in the same book, you got the Gordian Knot Plumbing Company. A couple of issues later, a couple of comic issues later, a couple of chapters if you got the book, the artist was researching one of the scenes on Mars, and he was looking at the NASA photographs of Mars, and there is a perfect smiley face on the surface of Mars, and he looks up where it is. It's in the Nodus Gordianus Mountains, the Gordian Knot Mountains.
What?
And so this is like there is weirdness afoot, which is not even planned, not even directed in any way. It's just the universe is weird.
Oh,
I love that, but it's like it's almost I take things like that as some kind of a green light or like a thumbs up. The universe is like, hey man, keep making comic books or something. Like you're tapping into something.
yeah. I look at it like checkpoints. It's like a little checkpoint. Like, yeah, you're going good. Exactly
That's
what
it.
you said.
Something is passing you
I think
Gatorade.
the same thing. I was like, yes, I think the same. I have come across an awful lot of coincidences in my life. Really amazing ones. Like a student of mine introduced me to his roommate, Lucas, who came from Poland. And I said, oh, I taught him Poland. Well, what part of Poland are you from? And he said, Krakow. Oh, I said, my favorite city. Amazing. I loved it. I taught as a guest lecturer at the Jagiellonian University at the Collegium Mino, where Dr. Faust is supposed to have taught and where he's supposed to have learned magic. And I say to him, well, the lecture that I gave there was about epistemology, about how we know things and how is it expressed in the Buddhist Abhidharma and how it changes over time. And at the end of the talk, a lot of people left to go and watch a soccer match. I let people ask any question they like about Buddhism, doesn't have to be about the lecture. And someone asked, sometimes we get a coincidence and people say, oh, that's karma. You have a karmic connection with, and is this true? And I say, well, you have to understand, what karma means, and I go into that, and you have to understand what a coincidence is, because very often we think things are amazing coincidence, and it's not really. And
That's a
I
good
said,
point.
For instance, if there are 23 people in a group, it's more than likely that the two of them have the same birthday. Now, we think that's an amazing coincidence, but it's not. The mathematics are tedious, but very easy. And the head of the department was there, the head of the psychology department. He says, oh, that can't be right. And I said, check it with your math department. I'm not going to go into the math now because I'm not sure I can remember it, but check it. And my translator who was sitting next to me says, look, I think there are 23 people here. Why don't we do it? And I said, yeah, all right, we'll go around, announce your birthday. Anybody else got the same birthday, put their hand up. Now, where should we start? And my translator says, well, with you, of course. I go, okay, February 26th. Head of the department puts his hand up.
Wow.
And as you know, outside later in the corridor, he comes up to me
He's
and
mind blown.
says, "How how did you do that?" And it was a communist country, right? I mean, it's not going to be enemy interference. And he says, how did you? I said, look, here's my passport. There's my birthday, February 26th.
Yeah.
And he says, wow, will you teach me meditation? I haven't been able to get to sleep since my wife left me. It was like 180 degrees, like absolutely turned around.
That's
Wow.
fascinating.
Anyway, I'm telling this story to Lucas, who says, wow, that is an amazing coincidence. And I said, no, I just explained it's not a coincidence. No, he says, no, not that. He says, my birthday is February 26th too.
Whoa,
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
that's amazing.
You're telling him the story. You're telling him
Yeah.
a story about coincidences, and in the story is your birthday matching the head of the department, who was the skeptic,
Yeah.
and then that guy's birthday is also that.
That's wild.
That is mind blowing.
That's
Yeah, I tell you, the world is just weird. You just got to shrug these things off.
yeah. That's the best way.
The answer is don't think about it. I mean, I don't know where to go with that. That does seem like that's an amazing story, and that's like orders of magnitude more coincidental. You know, like if you bump into somebody you know and they say small world, you know, you can cleverly say no, small city. You know, like we actually live in the same place. Coincidence can be unpacked a little bit.
I met somebody. Look, I mentioned we were climbing mountains in China with my friend Steve, who spoke Chinese. So I let him. He was quite fluent. I let him handle the maps and so on because he could read Chinese. I was there 6 weeks with him before I realized he didn't know Chinese maps have south at the top. We were constantly getting lost, and we climbed this mountain backwards, and against the stream of climbers. There were only two of them going that way. Everybody else was coming this way, and I was coming up to this stage, and I heard someone shouting, "Mike, Mike!" And I thought, look, I'm in China. I've never been here before. It can't possibly be me they're talking about. It must be some Chinese word I don't understand.
That's
Yeah.
it.
So anyway, I get up to this place, and there's this woman sitting down, swathed in scarves and got goggles on. She says, "Mike, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm climbing the mountain. Who are you?" And she laughed, took her scarves and goggles and things off, and explained. Well, she didn't have to explain. I could see. Obviously, she's the woman that worked in the next office to mine, the next room to mine at Amdahl Computers in Silicon Valley. And she was there with a husband who worked on the Stanford Linear Accelerator, and he was explaining to the Chinese how to make like nuclear accelerators, and she'd been given a guide to take her to scenic spots in China. And this was one of them. And the guide, oh, the poor guy, he was in the corner, his head in his hands, going white and sweating, because he's like, oh my God, like nuclear secrets are being like passed from one to the other in front of me, and I can't do anything about it. But it was sheer coincidence.
That's
There's
incredible.
another case where they think, oh, it must be enemy action.
Yeah.
No,
It has to
was
be.
just pure coincidence.
Oh God! I mean, I'm surprised we've gotten this far without mentioning the word lila. I mean, you're very familiar with Sanskrit, and I've heard this word often, and it's play. Yeah, it's some higher power is messing with us in some kind of loving way.
Yeah, you mentioned that loving way, because it doesn't just mean play. It means foreplay.
Oh, does it?
That's amazing.
Yes. Literally,
I love
means
that.
foreplay. And they all, like, everybody who's like read these Victorian translations and stuff just has it as play, but it's a little more directed than that.
That's fascinating. I'm so glad I brought it up. That's great.
Mike, we gotta wrap this up.
Yeah, we do. Unfortunately.
This was awesome, and we'd love to have you back on at some point to even talk about your new books and just in general to have you back on.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I had fun too. I always like blathering on like this.
It was
We
great.
loved it.
I'd love to read your book and,
Yeah.
and come back more informed and have some better questions and stuff. Or it sounds like you just have a lot of cool stories as well. Like I just can't wait to have you back on again. Is there any social media, anything you want to direct people, any of the listeners, if they want to find you? Obviously, the book.
The book, Secret Drugs of Buddhism, has its own Facebook page. I have my Facebook page. I'm Mike Crowley on one of the Mike Crowleys on Facebook.
That's fair.
And also, if as I get older, I feel I'm reading a lot more biographies and autobiographies. And I would like to recommend a really fascinating book to both you two and to your audience, which is called Divine Rascal. It's a real page turner, and it's a very, very well researched book about the guy who turned on Timothy Leary, the guy who introduced Timothy Leary to LSD.
Whoa.
And I will say no more. The book
I'm sold.
It's by Andy Roberts, who is a really good writer and a bit of a psychedelic historian. And so
That sounds like a perfect storm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't wait to read that.
Yeah.
yeah. So I just I read it end of last year and loved it. It's the best book I've read for ages.
Beautiful.
So
The title alone got me hooked. to
Divine
be honest.
Rascal.
Yeah.
Divine Rascal, yeah.
Awesome.
So about Michael Hollingshead, his real name was Shinkfield, but I'll let you find out all the rest. It's a great, breathtaking book, as he was a really larger than life character.
Yeah. I
Thank
can't wait.
thank you for that recommendation. That's
appreciate that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Throw in
And,
another book.
and of course, Secret
course.
Drugs of Buddhism is
That's it.
like chock full of hundreds of illustrations and yeah.
People can purchase this on Amazon?
They can purchase it on Amazon and from the publisher's own website, Synergetic Press. So yes, it's full of fun for all the family, and so packed with revelations and hidden gems of obscure erudition.
Fantastic.
So,
I can't wait, man. Talking to you and seeing how your brain works and seeing all the information you've gathered, I am holding my breath to see like your body, like your work compressed into something like into a book like that. So I'm
tangible.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, man. Really, really love talking to you. Can't wait to have you on again. I know I've said it like 10 times, but I really mean it. And thanks for your time. And yeah, it was a great pleasure. Really.
Yes.
Well, it was a pleasure talking, and I had no idea that chimpanzees could be so articulate.
Yeah. Well, the soma helped.
Take care.
Okay.
Have a good one, man. Thank you.